Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayor and councillors of the City of London, I'm here to have a voice because my voice needs to be heard, and I thank you for giving me the chance to be here to speak before you. Many other people have been in the same situation as myself, so their voice should be heard as well. So I want to speak on their behalf. Like many, when the lockdown first started in March, as my position, we have been out of a position. My last day of work was March 21st. I haven't been able to go back to work since then. When I found out that the rest of the year was totally wiped out, one of our bus companies' yards was actually put up on sale. We have been really financially impacted severely by the lockdowns and the mask mandates. When I found out that I was not able to go back to work this year, like many others, I decided to take a temporary position. That's the first time I tried to put on a face mask while I was driving. I'm a professional driver. I found out that day I could not safely drive, doing my job, doing my occupation while wearing a face mask. I lost my job that day. For the first time in my life, I was fired from a position. Because of that, I decided to take other positions. There's another transportation company I decided to go into. I was able to have an interview with the operations manager without a face mask. But the day I was supposed to show up for a driver evaluation, the anxiety caused me to postpone that position. Because of that, they decided not to hire me on fully. My old company decided to give me a position that could start in September, but I told them about my situation of not being able to safely carry out driving position while wearing a face mask. It was a safety issue. I offered them that I could wear a face shield while doing it. They said the irony that it was unsafe to do so. So I also want to talk about some of the discrimination that people who cannot wear a face mask. I should not have to wear this kind of shirt just to go shopping. I should not have to tell my occupation, my employer, that I cannot do something that is too unsafe for me to do. This type of discrimination actually violates 3 laws that are already present in position: the Ontario Labour Relations Act, the Ontario Human Rights Act, and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, I'd like to talk to you about some of the options that we can put on the table. There are solutions that are favorable other than having a mask mandate. We can keep masks voluntary still. Everybody who's comfortable and can physically and mentally still wear a mask, we can still do that. We can have other solutions. I'm willing to work with the city to not only stop the spread, but also provide solutions that can actually make sure it never comes back again. There are solutions available today, right now, and there are future ones coming down the pipe that we can also work down. I am willing to do this with the city on behalf of everyone else who cannot wear a face mask, and I'm interested in making sure we don't have these severe cases ever happen again. Thank you for hearing my story.
Thank you, sir. We will now ask Lee to come to the podium, please, if you would share your name, your full name, and your address as you wish, please. And you have 5 minutes.
So my name is Tiana Lee, priest. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I prefer not to give my address out if that's all right.
That's fine.
Okay. So, sorry, I don't know where to start here. Masks, sanitizer, you know, when the vaccine comes out, like all of these are medical equipment and medical tools, and I'm only comfortable giving my doctor permission to tell me if I can put them on or not, because only my doctor knows my medical history. The media doesn't know my medical history. The government doesn't know my medical history. They don't even know my name. They have no right to tell me what to wear and what I can safely not wear. There are many people, because everywhere says mandatory masks, and in very tiny writing, some places will say that there are medical exemptions. Most places don't even say it. So a lot of people are scared. They don't want the stress. They don't want the harassment when they go out to shop to just get groceries to feed their family, or to get clothes to clothe their family. It's too stressful. There's too much harassment out there when people don't wear the mask. So they put their own health at risk and put the mask on just to go out and do shopping. My friend came down to visit me from North Bay, and she's someone who has like severe respiratory problems because of years of damaging her lungs with smoking and other stuff, right? but she puts the mask on because she's scared of the constant fear propaganda in the media, and it's everywhere. It's on signs. It's like every store. You just pull up a site on the internet and there's always COVID-19 alerts on it. Like, it's literally everywhere. And she puts the mask on because she's scared, and she's suffering with her condition now because of it. So I'm worried, a few more months of this and she's going to be ending up in the hospital because of that, not from COVID, but because of that. So there's a lot of people who will put the masks on in the stores because they're scared and they don't want to deal with the stress. So that is where a big problem comes in when you take away people's choice, freedom of choice, and when you, I guess, allow all this fear propaganda to control people's actions. If you were to take away the mandatory
Catherine?
mask signs, I bet a lot of people would stop
I think I
there.
got onto Zoom on my iPad.
Another thing, there are a lot of different ways that we could be dealing with this. There was a video. Okay, so a lot of stuff is censored on the internet. Like, I just watched a video of 13 doctors. Like, these are doctors who went to school. They have their medical degrees. Some of them have been practicing medicine for years, some of them decades. And they came up and tried to tell people about their success with other treatments for COVID. And that video, I saved it to my laptop so that I could share it to people. But every single time I put it up on Facebook or tried to send it through a Facebook message, or even uploaded it on YouTube so I could send people to that link, down, down, down. Who's YouTube and Facebook to decide if they're going to cause medical harm or not? These are doctors with degrees who've been practicing for years. Facebook's not a doctor. YouTube's not a doctor. The media's not a doctor. Like, they can't tell people what to put on or in their body. And I mean, that can cause a lot of medical harm, especially when you're using fear to get people to do it. I found that a lot of these rules that have been put upon us has brought out a lot of the worst in society. Like, I've seen some pretty bad videos of people in the grocery stores attacking like women and children, or like just because they're not wearing a mask, like they're pushing their shopping carts and they're yelling and screaming and scaring the children. The children are screaming and crying because they're being like physically and verbally attacked. So this is the kind of stuff that people have to deal with when they decide to exercise their freedom and not cause medical harm to themselves from a pre-existing condition and not wear the mask. Basically, we have freedom of choice in the Charter of Rights for a reason, because people are always going to disagree. So that is there to protect everyone, not just a small group of people who are scared, or, like, we're all trying to do the right thing. These people here who are, anyone that you see out on the street who's against the masks and lockdowns and everything, they're not evil people. They didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I want everyone to die. Like, we all have people that we care about. We all have families and friends, old and young, that we don't want to die. But we see the other stuff that's going on. We have the time to do the research and dig for the truth, because it is there. If you look, you will find it. Not everyone has time to go and find it.
30 seconds, please.
Okay, sorry. So there are places that it's, people will post all the information for you. You can go on the line on Facebook, Hugs Over Masks on Facebook. There's going to be a lot of articles there that you can access quickly and maybe do a little bit of research yourself. Humans have done some amazing things. No one deserves this. Like, our economy is crashing. There's a lot of stuff happening in this, like, on the sidelines that you maybe don't see, that are being caused by these rules and restrictions. And
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Now I'd like to call on Sophie Hawkins, please, to come forward. Again, just confirm your name and your address as you prefer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie Hawkins, and I live at 539 Ontario Street. I'm aware that the council has been made aware of the legal challenge to COVID-19 measures filed in the Ontario Superior Court. So I have the cover letter to those measures here, which are calling the all of the COVID measures that have been implemented unhealthy and illegal. But I also have here a notice of public safety law from the National Council of Common Law Assemblies. And that is a First Nations republic that is a sovereign, it's called the Republic of Canada. It's a sovereign nation established in January 15, 2015, under the common law jurisdiction founded by First Nations activist and Nobel Peace Prize nominee Kevin Annett. He's the leader of the Global Common Law Movement and the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State. He's a former United Church minister who documented the genocide in residential schools. The Republic is founded in the spirit of the original Two-Row Wampum Treaty signed by the Indigenous, English, and French founding peoples that established peace, equality, and sharing of the lands. So they have issued a Notice of Public Safety Law, Order Number 0908-2020-A, abolishing and outlawing COVID restrictions, mandatory vaccinations, and other unlawful, unhealthy, and unwarranted measures in Canada. Let it be known that the regulations in Canada that restrict free movement and association and impose mandatory quarantines, social distancing, mandatory testing and vaccinations, and the wearing of masks are unlawful measures as they have been decreed by no court of law or legislature and are medically unsound requirements that threaten and assault the fundamental liberties, health, and security of all Canadians and violate the internationally recognized legal right of free and informed consent that governs all medical procedures under the Nuremberg Code 1947. Therefore, it is ordered by the National Council of Common Law Assemblies as the voice and defender of the people in Canada and acting in the absence of lawful, accountable government, that A, no one is obligated to consent to or comply with any COVID regulations, regardless of what authority or individual is ordering or compelling them. And B, anyone is free to actively resist and disobey such regulations and defend their natural liberties by any means necessary without fear of legal consequence. It is further ordered by the Council that any individual, official, body, corporate, or their agent that requires or imposes any of these regulations on anyone in Canada is taking part in a criminal conspiracy against the life, well-being, and liberty of Canadians and stands in violation of this order. As one engaged in a crime, the offender is subject to penalties and imprisonment upon conviction by the Supreme Common Law Court established by the Council. And they have issued a stand-down order to the federal, provincial, and municipal authorities and the health, judicial, and police agencies of Canada. Be advised that you are in violation of Public Safety Law NCCLA Order 0908-2020-A, issued by the Council and the people in lawful assembly on September 8th, 2020, namely abolishing and outlawing COVID restrictions, mandatory vaccines, and other unlawful, unhealthy, and unwarranted measures in our community. And that you're hereby ordered to immediately cease and desist from requiring or imposing COVID regulations on anyone in Canada, including masking, social distancing, quarantine, mandatory testing, and vaccinations, or other unwanted,
30 seconds.
Okay. So I'd just like to add to that, I think what's going on in the schools right now, it amounts to child abuse. These children are not at risk. We know that by the statistics. And I think that the masking of those children, we're traumatizing a whole generation. So please, please, please really think about what you're going to do next year, because you have an opportunity right now to do the right thing, to stand with our sisters and brothers of the First Nations and come together as people in Canada.
Thank you very much.
Want to continue. Thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate that, and I don't mean to be rude but we're respecting the timeline, and we appreciate everyone's presentation. Could I bring forward, please, Scott Johnson? I'd ask you to confirm your name and your address. Share that as you wish, please.
Thank you. My name is Scott Johnson. I'm at 1367 Reardon Boulevard here in London. If I may begin.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you to the Mayor, the City Council members, for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you. Let's understand that the decisions made by this council will have everlasting effects and will be marked as a standard by which future decisions will be made. Every one of your names will forever be attached to this event. Whether that will be a positive or a negative mention in history will be completely up to you. As a third-generation Londoner, I would like to bring up some important facts that I feel are not being properly addressed. Primarily, the mortality rate of this COVID outbreak and the mandated use of masks. As of yesterday, we are seeing a defined uptick in the cases of COVID. However, we are not seeing any increase in sickness, hospitalization rates, or death rates. In fact, the data sets that are coming into data.ontario.ca from our own health units are clearly showing that most new cases are resolved cases. So while cases can now be measured by the hundreds, deaths and hospitalizations are being reported in single digits, and often that digit is 0. I also feel the need to remind you that these cases are growing weeks after mask mandates have been implemented, proving that masking an entire county has done nothing to prevent the growth of cases. In fact, your health unit has not cited any peer-reviewed, randomized, controlled studies promoting the use of masks. The term growing body of evidence has replaced real science in regards of masking. We are now seeing the scientific community actually coming out against the use of masks for healthy people. Dennis Rancourt, who has published over 100 research papers in leading peer-reviewed scientific journals, has been an outspoken expert on mask efficacy, declaring in his papers, with a decade's worth of studies, that proves the opposite, that masks are ineffective with the prevention of viral respiratory diseases. He proves that such policies put in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19 have not been thoroughly researched, and that such methods can actually lead to bacterial infections when used in the general public. Also, please understand that there is a growing concern about the suspension of charter freedoms by all levels of government. Our understanding with the Canadian Charter Freedoms is sufficient to know that the onus is not on the citizen to prove that we should enjoy our freedoms. The onus is exclusively on the government to prove that any suspension of charter freedoms is necessary. The City Council and its health unit have not proven this. The fact that we continue to discuss cases and not mortality while concurrently promoting an unproven and invalid mask mandate is unacceptable. I would like to remind you that you have been elected by the people. I'd also like to remind you that you have an obligation and responsibility to consult with the people, not a select group of people or any active group, but all of the people of London. Had the city demonstrated any effort to use common sense and respectability, consulted with the people of London instead of blindly following a narrative that appears more and more to be part of a questionable agenda with organized groups, we could have been out of this so-called crisis months ago. And you could have been a beacon of common sense to the people of London and even the people of this province. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on Elizabeth Ratch. I want to make sure I have the pronunciation correct. Please come forward and reconfirm your name and provide your address as you wish, please.
Elizabeth is not present.
Thank you very much. In either rooms 1 or 2?
No.
Thank you. Then we have next on the agenda, Josh Georges. Josh, is Josh there?
No, Josh is not present.
Thank you. Miriam Cottard?
Miriam Carter is not present, but has sent someone in her place.
Then come forward and perhaps you will share Ms. Cottard's comments then. Thank you.
So state name and address. I'm Kristen Nagel, 66 Upper Avenue, London, Ontario. Okay. So I started off a student in London, now a resident. So I've been in London almost 20 years. I'm an RN, a registered nurse here in London, as well as a registered holistic nutritionist. I have a background in both conventional medicine as well as the holistic approach, and I understand both the science as well as the emotional connection to the body. And I understand about proper PPE and when is the appropriate time to wear it and when is not. I co-founded a business called Sweaty Successful Moms alongside two very strong, intelligent, and empowered women. As mamas ourselves to young children, we are passionate about raising happy, healthy, free-thinking children. Our mission is to grow a community that believes in raising leaders that are wholeheartedly connected to the earth. This mission seems stronger and more important than ever. The further we move away from nature, the more complications there are to be had. We are also seeing a breakdown and divide in community. We cannot raise leaders when we are raising them in fear. Fear of each other, fear of the world, fear of an illness, viruses, even the air we breathe, and the things we touch. We're teaching them to fear everything. What is the psychological and long-term trauma this is creating when they put a mask on themselves and when they are surrounded by their caretakers and loved ones wearing masks, as well as the general public? This does not create resiliency, but weakness. This does not keep their immune systems active and healthy. Instead, it suppresses it. We're taking away joy of play and being kids, instead replacing it with depression, behavioral issues, physical regression, and weakened immune systems. Community is breaking down. The divide amongst us has never been greater. Neighbors are turning against one another. This is not the world I envisioned for my boys. We're made up of more bacteria and viruses in our microbiome than we are of human cells. Basically, we are walking bacteria. If we fear viruses and bacteria, we fear ourselves and our own bodies. Masks are a strong factor in this, as many doctors have voiced their concerns of the lack of science that back wearing masks. The studies show increase in respiratory illnesses by 13%. We're breathing in bacteria in our mouths, and the masks do not prevent small particulates from coming and going. We're breathing in microplastics, fibers, and chemicals. We're increasing anxiety when we put us in a fight or flight response. It increases our cortisol levels, and it creates the perfect storm for illness, creating a weak and sick society. No longer are we empowering health or immune systems, movement, mindset, or real food, vitamins. We're removing sovereignty over our bodies and replacing it in the hands of someone else. This should terrify you when we no longer have rights over our own bodies and our children's. What is this doing to our children? What is it teaching them? What is the future generation we are raising? Definitely not leaders wholeheartedly connected to the earth. Humans thrive on connection, interaction, love, compassion. Our children not only thrive in this environment, it is essential for their growth and development and their foundation. We're instilling fear purposefully and subconsciously onto them. We're replacing promotion of good bacteria with over-sterilized chemicals, over-sterilized areas, chemically laden environments with hand sanitizers, obsessive cleaning, bleach, disinfectants, etc. These are toxic, endocrine disruptors, and carcinogenic. It kills the microbiome, killing all bacteria living amongst our systems, and it continues to weaken and expose us to what might be out there. We're pitting our children against one another, and I have seen this happen in real life. And we're creating fear of their own bodies. Our children are getting sicker each year, more immunocompromised, more autoimmune diseases, more allergies, more infections, and more behavioral issues. London has always thrived on communities supporting local and healthy living. It's what keeps attracting me to this city. However, this was taken away from us with the lockdowns as we were forced to isolate and businesses closed. The heart of London is suffering. We can do better. We should be an example to the rest of Ontario, for the rest of Canada, heck, even the world. We need community. We need hugs, smiles, laughter, joy, connection. With community also comes security and safety, peace and well-being, strong bodies and minds, and strong immune systems.
30 seconds,
Our kids
please.
need this the most. Fear only creates disease. It doesn't prevent us from dying. It prevents us from living. This is being driven with flawed PCR testing, with high rates of false positives and lack of understanding of viruses, germ theory versus train theory, our immune systems and mental emotional connection to health, and clearly the lack of understanding on how to promote health and well-being. Cases do not equal infection. Asymptomatic people are not threats or carriers. They're healthy people, period. We need to be an example of Ontario and the rest of the world. We will not let fear win. We will now move forward with love.
Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge all of the all of the people in committee rooms 1 and 2 that provided presentations, as well as those that provided written submissions. You'll see within the added colleagues J through S, which are individuals: Lisa Hawley, Mark Moman, Sarah Johnson, Elena Clunas, Kristen Nagel, Kayla Lewis, Karen DeWitt, Larry Farquharson, Councillor Van Holst, Susan Horvath, who have all provided written submissions. And thank you very much for your contributions to this discussion. So colleagues, we now come back then to 4.1, which is to receive the 60-day report, receive the delegations, and also the written submissions. I would look for a mover and a seconder for that if I could. Clerk, if you're going to tell me I'm on the right path with that. Apparently we are. Councillor, are you moving that? Councillor Van Holst, your hand's up.
Yes, I can move that. I'll have some comments too.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kayabaga, comments or questions? Councillor Van Holst, please.
Thank you very much. So colleagues, I made a couple submissions. Two, I actually think I wish I'd send the second one first. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Of course, I don't have to tell any of you that we need to make decisions based on accurate information. And so I looked into the science, the randomized clinical trials, and the systematic reviews of the mask literature. And I believe this needs to be heard by the public. So it's all cited. The links are here. You can check it up. Check it out afterwards. However, I'll go through it quickly. So interestingly, in the end of the 70s, there were some doctors who said to themselves, wow, we've been wearing masks for decades now, but I don't know for sure if these actually work. And so some tests were done. One in particular, they just stopped wearing them for 6 months and found out that the infection rates went down a little. So, and concluded, well, perhaps these masks don't make a difference. Then some randomized clinical trials began. There was one that was published in 1991. It was a 2-year study where 3,000 surgeries were done, 1,500 with masks, 1,500 without. And they found out that the infection rates were 4.7% with the masks and 3.5% without the masks. So the conclusion was that the use of face masks might be reconsidered. Another study was done to provide further clarity. They thought, what about the other people in the operating room, the ones not operating on the patient directly? And so 800 surgeries like that were tested out, 400 of each, masks on, mask off. And of course, these results for this one, 11.5% infection with masks, 9.9% without masks. They concluded that surgical site infection rates did not increase when non-scrubbed operating room personnel did not wear a face mask. Another group looked at less surgical settings. And this was a group that does dialysis. And their first test with 2 groups, masks and not masks, they found no difference. They followed up that with a 5-year test where one of their centers wore no masks, and they compared that to the other centers and decided that routine use of face masks may be unnecessary and could be discontinued because, again, there was no difference. I did include a study that showed that cloth masks are more harmful than medical masks, but I'll skip that one and move on to the systematic reviews. You could say, well, Councillor, you're just cherry picking a couple of studies, and that's the purpose of a systematic review. Somebody looks at all the research that someone else has done and then puts together all the conclusions. So there was a number of these systematic reviews done, and I'll share some of them. In 2005, they looked at 2 trials involving about 1,500 patients. In 2014, 3 trials with over 2,000 patients. 2016, they looked at 3 trials with another 2,000 participants. And all of these concluded it's unclear whether the wearing of surgical face masks by members of the surgical team has any impact on surgical wound infection rates for patients undergoing clean surgery. Another one in 2009, same thing. They concluded that they weren't sure whether wearing surgical face masks harms or benefits the patient undergoing effective surgery. And there's quite a bit more, but I think we get the idea that we're not seeing a method, a strategy here that's going to have an impact positively on our population. And I bring up the surgical ones here because that's why we've made this assumption. We say, well, doctors are wearing this, and so why shouldn't we? It must help. But as they looked at it, the research actually shows it's not helpful, mostly because the particle size of viruses is so much smaller than the mask is able to filter out. So I want us to really think twice about what we're imposing on people, because
15 seconds, Councillor.
Yeah, if masks were 50%, 25%, even 2% effective, maybe we'd have a justification, but please think again about this. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I do have a comment on my other submission.
Councillor Squire, pardon me, Councillor Squire, yes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank the people who came here to make submissions today. I listened to them very carefully, and I understand your position. I hope you understand that as a city councillor, my task is to listen to all of my constituents and try to make the best decisions I can. I am not a doctor, I am not a scientist. I have to say that the vast number of my constituents are supporting the wearing of masks at this time. And I hope you understand that they view it as something that we should be doing at this point in time. The larger point for me, though, is this is a health decision. We are following the direction of the medical officer of health. The issue is, you may say, well, he's wrong and you shouldn't agree with him, but that's not my responsibility. My job is not to become a scientist or a doctor, and I follow the direction and the instructions of the medical officer of health. And I would say, with all due respect to my colleague, Councillor Van Holst, my job is not to be an advocate for one position or another. My job is to weigh what I hear, stay within my jurisdiction, listen to my constituents, and make decisions based on that. And I think that's what I've done, and I think what others have done. I also want to speak to the issue of people being treated badly without masks, and of course that should not happen. I have to say that I do want to stick up a little bit for Londoners, particularly Londoners that I've seen interacting with others in the community with or without masks. I've seen nothing but generosity and kindness and understanding. I myself have not witnessed these events that I agree are unfortunate, but I think this is an example of people agreeing that we have to do our best to try to protect our fellow members of the community. And I think that's what Londoners are doing. At the end of the day, we may be wrong. We may be wrong in what, and be found out to be wrong, but I think council right now is following medical directions as we must and making the best decision that we can.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I see none, but I do believe that Councillor Van Holst, you wanted to make another comment? Go ahead, Councillor.
Oh, yes. Thank you to Councillor Squire for his comments. I'm not sure I agree with the how this came out. Is Dr. Mackey said that he didn't think it was warranted for him to make a mandatory mask bylaw, but suggested that we could show leadership if we wanted to. So it seemed to me like he's offering us a choice to do this, and this wasn't a necessarily a request or a demand, because he could have simply done it himself. This is something that we took on because we wanted to be involved and take on that role of being a health authority, which my other communication expressed some of those concerns. And the initial one was for us to realize that we may be acting out of a fear or panic because how this COVID pandemic has been portrayed. So at the very beginning, we looked to some scientists who were doing computer models of how this might turn out, how many people were infected, and those were turned out to be overstated. We also noticed that the press had overstated things, at least in the opinion of about 48% of Canadians who believe that they were projecting a little too much fear. And when you combine those things, we get a bit of a panic, and that was witnessed by the run on toilet paper, which was, I guess, ironic because this is a respiratory disease and not a gastrointestinal one. But once again, we see people acting on incorrect information, and we got to make sure that that's not us. I don't want to challenge the Doctor of Health for Dr. Mackey for doing his job, but I do need to challenge us for the way that we do our job. We've seen that someone supplied some pictures. Even the masks themselves suggest that they don't protect against COVID-19. So we had a choice to say, ask Londoners to please wear masks, or we could have forced them to do it. And I believe that we went a little bit too far. And for that reason, we see some legal challenges coming forward. Hopefully we won't be a part of that. My perhaps biggest concern about us taking on this role and going the mass direction is that we're not getting targeted lasting benefits. A resident wrote me to say that he'd help raise money for a filtration system for a nursing home that had no COVID cases. And if our society had invested money in that kind of protection, then we would be safe from this virus and all bugs in the future. But spending a lot of money to keep healthy people at home, or to tell healthy people to wear masks when we can be pretty sure they don't make a difference, is not a great use of our resources. It's interesting that in one set of research for COVID, by topping someone up who's deficient in vitamin D, they have a 77% less chance of contracting COVID. So 77%. How many university students do we have to chase around in order to make that significant a difference in the lives of the vulnerable people? So we should really be looking, how can we protect the vulnerable rather than disaffect the healthy. So in summary,
30 seconds, please.
Yes. We lack expertise as a body. We're unnecessarily acquire a greater accountability. We open ourselves to constitutional challenges. There's a number of challenges for us to do this, but if you want us to remain as part of a health authority, I'll do my job and try to make sure that we're as well informed as we can about the science. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Colleagues, 4.1 has been moved and seconded. I have no one else showing on the speakers list. Seeing none, then I would like to call the question. Councillor Van Holst.
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Salee,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Helmer,
Yes.
Councillor Cassidy.